My question is about the mini nukes or the backpack nukes, the W-54s, the ones that were small enough that a guy could jump out of an airplane carrying a nuclear weapon, that were used or at least built in the 60s and 70s. And I'm wanting to understand why the US and Soviet Unions built nuclear weapons so small, and what would they have done with those, and are those likely to come back?
In the 50s, remember our NATO policy, which has always been based on first use, a first use threat. And Biden, by the way, is talking about an Asian NATO, which does not warm my heart as I'm sure he is, he's still talking about one where the US hegemony is based on our readiness to initiate nuclear war on a first use threat, as it is in European NATO. So that essentially started in the late 40s. Uh, Russia got its first nuclear explosion in 49. But so almost from the beginning of NATO, that threat has been made against a nuclear weapon state. It's been from the very beginning what Richard Nixon later called against Vietnam, his madman theory. Not that if he used nuclear weapons against North Vietnam, it would blow the world up. It probably wouldn't have. It wouldn't have won the war, I don't believe. And he didn't carry out that threat. So it was, he didn't carry it out, by the way, for one clear reason. There were 2 million people on the streets on a weekday of October 15th, 1969. It was, in effect, a general strike. And Nixon had already made his threats, preparing to carry them out on November 3rd, and he realized if he carried out that threat, which I think he was prepared to do, it wouldn't be 2 million people on a weekday leaving work. The country, not everybody, but he would have a general strike that would be the greatest crisis we'd had since the Civil War. So those people extended the moratorium on the combat use of nuclear weapons till now, since, 50 years. So those little weapons, to come back to your question then, they actually were thinking crazily of limiting a war, a limited nuclear war with atomic demolition munitions, corresponding to the little ones you described, to slow the Soviet advance, as though that wouldn't lead to full-scale retaliation by the Soviets. Well, it might not, but the chance of that was very low. And these people were gambling. I'm talking about Eisenhower now, and they were gambling, and extended into the 60s. Basically, our planning depended on that we would, if necessary, against the Soviet assault, and it was assumed it would quickly be necessary to initiate nuclear war against them, either tactical under Kennedy, or as Eisenhower planned, an immediate full-scale attack. Now, Kennedy did not plan the latter. He did expect to use if necessary. And my belief, based on some evidence, is that Kennedy was bluffing, but was not intending to do that. But we can't, I believe rather strongly that was in his mind. What he actually would have done in a crisis, even he couldn't predict exactly. And could nuclear war have resulted with Kennedy in office, say in the Cuban Missile Crisis or Berlin? Yes, I think it could have, even if he intended initially not to do that. So these backpack things and these small demolitions, and by the way, one high-level Soviet at the time of the transition from the Soviet regime to the Russian testified in various places that he knew that a number of backpack, very small Russian Soviet demolitions had disappeared. And that's never really been pinned down, whether there was anything to that or not. But the idea was exactly that if you limit yourself to these small tactical weapons, maybe it'll stay small and you'll achieve at least a stalemate, or you avoid defeat, might even win with that. Well, an assistant secretary under Trump, a deputy assistant secretary named Elbridge Colby, wrote an article in Foreign Affairs, I think in 2018, I've forgotten exactly. And I remember the arresting statement in that. if we use tactical nuclear weapons, which he was in favor of if necessary, against China, they might not respond. And that's true. They might not. And there's an overwhelming chance that they would. And are American leaders willing to gamble on that possibility? Or for that matter, Chinese leaders willing to gamble? And I would say, yes, history indicates not all of them, but some of them, influential, are willing to gamble. And I think that what we need to do as a species in all countries of the world is to say, this is wrong. We do not accept being hostages to the decision and the gambling character and the concerns of not losing office of a handful of officials in nuclear weapon states who actually, if you know the history, have made insane, crazy decisions in the past of various kinds. I haven't even, exhausted the range of those at all. Actually, the prolongation of the war in Vietnam, the invasion of Iraq, were, if you don't want to say insane, almost inconceivably reckless decisions. They were not based on a reckless, in the case of Vietnam, they were not based on a reckless belief or stupid belief that they would quickly win. In Iraq, they were based on a stupid illusional belief shared by Tom Friedman and others that we would not only quickly win, but that it would be no problem. We could then move on to other states. There was no occupation problem. Okay, that's almost unbelievably delusional, but it does occur at these high secret levels with nobody challenging them, either because the president agrees with this and you don't want to contradict the president, or because every human is capable of being stupid and having crazy beliefs, especially when their job depends on it.